to pick the most important ones. Normally, a lot of questions. That's great. Thank you all guys for being here. So the first topic in here that we discussed, Andreas, that was the thing about the central product lifecycle management, which is all to do with product information management. As we discussed, and some of you guys would know, the product information management in Dynamics 365 has its good and its bad sides. It's very important for the life cycle of the product to be able to control that, and centrally too. And some of the things that at least I thought was a bit of a challenge with Dynamics 365 so far is that once you have released the products from the central product management, then the products are sort of updated for each legal entity for a lot of the things that you do. And that basically means that you have a lot of redundant information, well, at least duplicated information about the products in each of the legal entities. The central product lifecycle management has been announced from Microsoft, I think. Can you remember that, Andreas? When was the first time this was actually being discussed?
It's already some time ago, but obviously
wasn't it? And I was, as always, right? But it's always good to announce it, and I was very excited at the time, looking very much forward to that. And as time goes by, and okay, is it ever going to happen? But now it is going to happen, and then we start thinking about all the trouble that it might add. But first, let's have a look at the good things of this, as Microsoft sees it at least, that you will be able to reduce the number of shared data, and also make it a lot easier to maintain that data. A lot of our Dynamics 365 customers, they use the same products across multiple legal entities, and then you have to maintain the data across those ones. It could be hard, and it could lead to some confusion and a lot of extra data that you would have. But then, on the other side, it might not be too easy to get this one up and running. So the feature details of that would be that with the usual cross-company data sharing, which we use in a lot of other places, Microsoft themselves out of the box, and then on projects we switch it on, and I guess you have done that too, Andreas, with some of the projects you've been using the cross-company data sharing. Then of course we could run into some other trouble with this. It does make it easier to maintain the single product information across legal entities, but it also introduces some headaches. And Andreas, I don't know, have you met some customized solutions across the products where you've been working, where your customers have tried to do this or have done this, shared product data across the companies, not just duplicating or releasing as we do in standard out-of-the-box Dynamics 365, but then some solution about this central product lifecycle management. Have you seen that?
Well, basically a lot of partners, Microsoft partners, also have got their add-on solution, which they sell to their customers. Often I've seen it in a way that there is one, call it master company, could be a real company or just a company to manage the product data and maybe other shared data, and have a function to copy it from there to the other companies. That's what I've seen frequently. But yeah, it is a solution, maybe not always ideal, but
so you've seen some things that would be both partner solutions at the general level, which you could get from AppSource or whatever you like to get it, and perhaps also specifically on some of the projects.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And it's also always a question of which data to share. For example, if you have some item groups, for example, which then do you want the same item group for a product in each company, or should it be possible to have it different? And all this needs to be discussed and can be different from company to company.
Very much so. And one of the places where we meet that already in supply chain management is when we do the intercompany ordering, when we need to do some mapping of some values, and depending on what we do, we need to create the same values across the different legal entities where we have intercompany ordering, depending on the setup, of course. And that actually brings me to another slide about which information can be shared, and then what are the major headaches which I really don't understand why Microsoft has not done better with this, right? I'm a big fan of Dynamics 365, but I'm not always completely in love with the solution. And with this one, which I've been waiting on for so long, I can't really get why they haven't done it differently. Next slide. But first, this about what could you actually share across, must you share? And I think release products, that kind of makes sense that you must share that. Otherwise, the central product lifecycle management wouldn't really work. And then you could then select which ones to use with the various methodologies. The duplicate or single doesn't matter about that today. And then you can have these tables, all these tables in there. This basically shows the complexity, I think, about this centralized product lifecycle management. That there's so many things that you could share across these. But some of the things in here which are not here, which is not on separate tables, is actually given the headache, which I'll present at the next slide. And I don't know, Andreas, if you have seen any solutions which are nice, because what I'm going to address right now is about the base prices. When you create release products, you give the information about the base prices would be the sales price, the purchase price, the inventory price, and that is in the accounting currency of that legal entity. So what would now happen if you create prices in, like in US manufacturing, where in US manufacturing, our controls are data one, where the accounting currency is US dollars. And then you do this, the centralized product lifecycle management, you enter the product price, the sales price, and the inventory price. There is no clue about the currency. Well, there is. It's the currency of the ledger screen of the accounting currency, in this case, US dollars. And that basically means that when you create this, it's going to be the same price across all the legal entities in their accounting currency. Mm-hmm. So that means if they do not have the same accounting currency, you cannot use the base prices in it. I don't really know why this has been done this way. I think this is a big omission. And with the next couple of lines I've got in here, you have to be very careful about this to understand that either you use the same accounting currency, which of course is possible, but for a lot of our customers where this would be handy, the tool, the centralized product lifecycle management, this is not good. The other way could be that you're not going to use the base prices. You would always have some trade agreements in here, trade agreements with the purchase price or the sales price, where you can then specify for the various currencies, as you would know. But I don't really know, Andreas. What do you think about this?
To my opinion, it's also very much depending on the situation of the enterprise. If you really want to use the same cost price, purchase price, sales price, for example, if you have a company in Europe, in the US, is it really the same cost price? Even if you convert the currency, normally I would tell it's company specific. Yeah, of course, it's depend. If I have two companies in Denmark, maybe they have the same price and I want it this way. But often I wouldn't tell it's the same price because I have transportation and other costs and also different prices locally. So, but it depends. You cannot give a general answer.
That's what we always say to customers, isn't it? It depends, right? And it drives them up the wall when the answer is it depends. But I agree. But I really wish there was some kind of help that either there could be a parameter that would block you from using the base prices in the accounting currencies. So you would have to use trade agreements with some specific currencies in it, or some other way that we could specify base prices in a currency we would like. That's probably going to be some extra work for Microsoft. But I think right now there is a risk of doing something in here that you don't really want to on that. But if you're going to use this solution, I think, which I like, is here. But I think the thing about the prices, that was the biggest of the things I saw that could have been done better, to be honest with that.
There is also the item price form and table. Maybe this is also a solution.
And that would be great if the user was forced to use that. So they couldn't by mistake have a base price and forget to set up the rest of the things. So basically, I like to see something about this being grayed out, basically, unless you allowed it in the parameters or there was a comparison between the accounting currencies. But okay, enough nagging about that because I like the functionality. It's going to be here finally. It looks like, and that's great. So no more kind of holes in the cheese. Just a small thing in here about one thing which is nice too, that we could have the product information, names and descriptions in each of the user's preferred language. So that's kind of nice if you've got an international company and then the users, the sales reps, people on the floor, they could see the description of the items in their language. In some places we're used to that. We're used to the thing about translating on payment terms or translating on main accounts and translating in other places too. And it's the same functionality if we haven't done the translation and the user then uses Spanish or whatever. We haven't done the translation in Spanish, it'll default to the system language, like we know from all the other places where we do these translations. That was my take on the centralized product lifecycle management. And if you have any questions, please drop a note in the chat. We might even be able to answer, but we'll wait until we get to sort of minute 45. Now, trying to keep it short. I didn't quite succeed, but now, Andreas, what do you think about the new functionality about the near real-time inventory insights? What's your take on that?
Well, basically, yeah, one question. Is it, I know it hasn't been intended this way. Is it possible that I share my screen for a few?
Of course. I like surprises. That's why I work with Dynamics 365 anyway, right? So let's just see. I stopped sharing my screen and then please bring in your presentation, Andreas.
Well, there's not much presentation, but just something which I would like to share about the inventory visibility add-in. There you also have got the link to Microsoft Learn, where I can find the details on that inventory visibility add-in. Basically, what this is for is, or what the main use is, if you have not only Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, which, well, would be the best solution, I guess, but sometimes you have a mixed environment where some companies in your enterprise work with finance operations, others work with Business Central, and others work with different ERP solutions. And with the inventory visibility add-in, you can have one common view of the item availability across all these companies, all these systems, to collect the data from anywhere. In the documentation which I'm showing here, you can read all the details about this and the inventory visibility add-in, and there is also a dashboard where you can view the results of the item data or item availability data. Together with this, there is the option to have, maybe I return to you to show the current PowerPoint slides. Am I surprising you again, or?
Yes, you did. What do you want to see? You want to see the slide, or you want to?
The PowerPoint slide, just to.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just get back to that. Sure. Yeah. Well, I might have a surprise for you as well later, Andreas. So it's going to be payback time later on. Well, that's fine. So we had about inventory logistics in general, and then we had the actual things about inventory insights. That's the ones you want to see.
Yeah. Now the next one. Basically, we've heard about the inventory visibility add-in. Then together with this, we have the well, this is more or less independent, the available to promise time fence, which has been think 7 days, and now it has been extended to up to 3 months.
Yep.
Available to promise, that's the function where you can view when you enter an order or whenever you need, whether the item which you want to sell is available either in inventory or with future transactions. So if there is a purchase order or production order which can fulfill your demand, the demand from your order line. And there now we have got the option to look forward for 3 months. Of course, you got to know how reliable these data are in your company.
Yeah, that's true.
If you know there will be a purchase order which should come in 2 months, does the supplier shift the date usually, or is it reliable?
Yeah. I guess it's the same with all the things you do with master planning at large and other things. Trying to predict things is always depending, as you said before, depending on things. Can you trust your own production? Do you get the raw materials, which is a challenge these days? And what about the subcontractors or your suppliers as well? But I think it's better to have the tool and then say, well, we can't use it because of that, or you will have some extra buffers in there, or whatever you like to do, than not being able to offer the tool.
Yeah, so that's about the ATP, available to promise. Remember, we also got the capital to promise option, which does not only look at current orders, but includes planning or starts local master planning. Then last topic here about soft reservation. That's again with the inventory visibility add-in and only for this. So if you have a new order, to avoid promising too much to your customers, you can make soft reservations, and in the inventory visibility dashboard, you can then view what is reserved already for other customers. That's before the order is in the inventory transactions.
So yeah, I think that's nice. I'm looking forward to get to use that actually. And then there was some of the things that you mentioned in here, which was then in this with the near real-time inventory insights on that. So this is just basically the hot air from Microsoft or the buzzwords. What this is, and you mentioned already that allows you to predict some of the things that's going to happen and have a look at that as well.
And this is, well, because it's a separate service which you've got to install in Asia, then it is not online in your Dynamics Finance Operations database, but therefore there is some delay, but it's nearly real time.
Yeah, whenever I'm on a project and I say something like near real-time update, like in finance, you don't do real-time update, do near real-time update from subledgers. The customers are on their toes and say, oh, what do you mean by near real-time? And then you say, well, a lot of times you won't really notice because it's going to be there within a split second or 1 or 2 seconds or whatever. And with all the value that you get from these tools, I think that we could live with the near real-time thing compared to running master planning for a weekend or whatever we used to in the old days with AX4 or whatever it would be. So I like the tools, and thank you for a heads up on that. Anything else to add to this, please?
Currently, I think we should move on.
We will, definitely. And then I had this one. That was a nice surprise to you, Andreas. Because in manufacturing now, you can make the goods available before you actually have reported those as finished. What do you think about that idea?
Well, this is also something about this near real time. That's what I know. So when you with the advanced warehouse management, when you do all the transactions, that you can already show this before you have gone through all the transaction postings.
And I guess that includes the thing about how reliable are your things then. If you want to make the items available before you actually post a journal, and then you change things because that's what you can do before you post a journal.
Yes.
Are you going to regret that later on?
Since it's nearly real time, then.
Yeah. So let's move on. Time is flying, so let's just move on to warehouse management things in here. Andreas, what did you think about the buzzwords in here as usual? Not too much thoughts in here. This is about Microsoft and also talking about the new mobile apps moving to Power Apps instead of actually being workspaces on that, which I think is nice. There's a few things happening in warehouse management, but did you see anything big?
Well, I think what they prepare to start with, which is the first wave now, is currently all the transactions within the warehouse are regular inventory transactions. Basically, you can filter not to view them, but they are inventory transactions, and this generates a lot of transactions which are just transfers from one location to the other. A lot of overhead. Which makes the system slower, as it, well, of course it can do something, but it is a lot of overhead, a lot of transactions which are not really necessary for the other areas, so because they are not just internally in the warehouse. And Microsoft is starting now to move that transactions to separate transaction table. So we've got the transactions within the warehouse. Of course, with all the, if you track the dimensions, including the location on the upper level, and then there you need some synchronization. So that's the start of journey, but in the end it will be faster then, and decoupling the transactions within the warehouse from the inventory transactions, which are on a higher level. Let's say this way.
And that's, I think, some of the things we're going to see in other modules as well. That the things which are not really required to do. A month ago, I did something about finance with financial tax, which to me was making things more efficient with financial dimensions. And I think this is the same thing. That, as you said, some of the overhead which is added kind of unnecessarily, and that is now being possible to remove.
But there is no promise or anything. If I look at the sales serial numbers, which have been introduced, I think 10 years ago, and where there was also a discussion about that, well, the serial numbers, if you don't have the inventory value by serial number, you don't need that many transactions in the inventory transaction.
No.
But then Microsoft obviously has decided not to follow up on this, so the functionality hasn't been enhanced.
Well, fingers crossed that they might think about it now. That could be nice.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it depends. Always depends what's more important. If they think it's more important than other things, or if it's not that.
It's true. About the last thing that I mentioned in here on the slideshow about the location directive scopes. Okay, what's the value for me in that? Microsoft mentioned that these with the location directive scopes would make it easier, remove some of the things that you would set up, less rigid, reduce redundant. All sounds nice, but did we really have that many redundant configurations when the location? I know location directives is really one of the key things in the warehouse, but is this big value?
Well, in the projects or discussions in which I was involved, it hasn't been that relevant. But obviously, there were other projects, other customers where this has been an issue. And that's why Microsoft has obviously introduced some additional feature, the location directive scopes, to tell where to pick from and what to put to in for different stock keeping units.
Okay. Oh, so there's actually a reason for being in here with this one, that at least in some projects it could bring some value. I was just trying to think when I saw this, where would that have helped my customers on that, and I couldn't really think of a situation.
Will be
Okay,
large scale customers in trade,
yeah,
retail customers or retail enterprises might be in that area.
yeah, okay. Well, moving on fast, we've got sort of 15 minutes, 20 minutes before we get to the question and answer session on that, and so I'll just move on with. What have I done? Andreas' favorites, at least from the point of view of the modular functionality and manufacturing, and that's the planning optimization again. I remember when we talked about the planning optimization, I think a couple of years ago, the first time around when it came out, there's a lot of things that you couldn't do with the planning optimization. I remember you said, "Well, there's a lot of things that prevents your customers from using that because you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that and so on." But now it seems like the planning optimization is getting there. Is that
Yeah,
true?
Microsoft heavily invests in planning optimization already for a few years now. And well, since master planning uses a lot of data from a lot of areas,
Yeah,
it's not that easy to take it out and make the calculation somewhere else. You got to transfer, synchronize all the data which are required to run master planning. And
yeah,
for a trade company, that's easier because it's the same item which will be purchased and sold, and therefore there's a direct relations. When it starts with manufacturing, we've got the bill of material and with settings in the items, and so there are a lot of master data which are required in addition to the transactions and the inventory level. So that has not been that easy, and it's a journey, and we are already quite far. What's included now is that we can use now rounding factors and multiples in bill of materials, which has not been available up to now. Then we can use BOM lines with a negative quantity. You might ask yourself, what's this for? Well, more than, let's say, 15 years ago, when there hasn't been the solution for the process industries in Dynamics, the way to work with co-products was to enter a negative BOM line. This is something you do not consume it, but you receive it when it posts a negative BOM, negative journal, picking list journal. And basically, the process industry with the co-products also is a negative BOM line. Well, not shown this way, but well, from a data structure level, data structure point of view, it is that way. And now we can also use co-products and byproducts. So if I have, well, for master planning, co-products are relevant. The byproducts you do not want to receive. So if I demand, I need the co-product, then it will generate a production order, planned production order for the main product. Or for the byproduct, this never should happen. But still, it is included now in the calculation.
Does that mean that that the planning optimization now has all the things in it that we could do with sort of classic master planning, or are there still things missing?
There are still a few things missing. There is this tool where you can check whether this fit analysis to identify if your company needs some features which are not included yet, but the gap is becoming less and less.
Okay, it's good to hear, because I think it's a marvelous tool. Me not being a manufacturing guy, I think it's a marvelous tool, but of course you have to live with and explain to the customers the holes in the cheese, and now less holes and more cheese perhaps in this in here. So that's good. Great. Well, thanks, Andreas. That sounds good, I think. Now, Just a little bit of the performance and resilience improvements. Not going to be much because this is one of my Microsoft favorites. Each and every time we'll be told now the solution is more stable and more resilient and it performs faster. And often it's actually true on that. And some of the things in finance and also in supply chain management that happens now is that you can archive transactions and so on. You know, over the years you built so many data. And that is true for finance, that is true for inventory transactions, as Andreas mentioned, but lots of things, not really necessary even on that. So what you could select is that then you could move some of the data into data lakes, being financial, being supply chain management. And then, of course, you still got access to that. Just have to say, please, kind of thing. And that means that from the fewer data that you would address, considering moving around, looking up, listing, or whatever you do, the day-to-day working environment will be faster, lowering operating cost, perhaps, but it'll be faster on that. So I really like the idea of the possibility of letting some of your data go. Why would you want to have the data just next to you if it's 10 years old? And so why not just park it? And then if the auditors, whoever cares about it, they want to see that, you could always look it up. If you want to generate some forecast based on historical data, you could always find it. So you just park it a bit further away from the terminal to be in sort of airport language on that, but still you can find your car, you can find your data in here. And then we also talked about, as you mentioned, Andreas, about the warehouse specific inventory transactions. So I'm not going to do that again. That was just a couple of examples. Now, one of the things that I do quite often, I can see there is a mention of an unstable connection, at least at my end. I hope the webinar still runs kind of okay. But procurement, in the procurement area, not much, really. The time is running, and that's fine because there's not much in procurement anyway on that. So there's been a few things added in here. The major thing mentioned is the integrity of the vendor bank account. That's a big feat. Well, I know it's important, right? But when you have to tell that this is one of the big things happening in procurement, I think you have a lack of news in this area. So I think it's great. Isn't this more kind of financial thing? I think it is, but it's nice. And there's a new workflow actually. So this is business on that, but I think it's more finance actually. So talking about finance, what is it actually with this, with the vendor bank account information? That is, in finance, the vendor bank account is, of course, one of the more delicate areas. You don't want too many people to change this around. So now you got, on top of the thing you already have with suggested changes on the vendor master data, we now have a specific workflow for the vendor bank account information approval. It is important, and this is an area of fraud, so you need to be precise about these things and have some constraints on it. We had the possibility already, so I don't think this is huge. It's just okay, fine, and then just move on. Now, something which is really, that's both of us, Andreas, this one in here. This is manufacturing, and this is financial. Now, we're not going to get into details about this, but sometimes when I'm on a project, and perhaps you met it too, Andreas, manufacturing companies, they complain about they cannot use standard cost because it is not really allowed by GAAP or IFRS or by the local authorities and so on. And I don't quite agree whether it's not allowed as such, but I know you have to take a bit care if you're using standard cost or moving average when you do US GAAP or IFRS. And especially when you've got some local requirements by governments and so on. So what you can do now is to address this, if that is something that you have to do, and I think I'll come back to that, especially when you've got some local requirements, because I think if you're just looking into doing things about GAAP or doing something about IFRS, you could still do it in Dynamics 365 standard without using the global inventory accounting add-in stuff. But let me just show what is new. And that is something that is, to me, really exciting because so far we had sort of a one-to-one relationship between ledgers and legal entities, whether you call them companies or legal entities, doesn't matter. But now from a costing perspective, will have the possibility of multiple costing ledgers. That might be shiny new objects. It will get it in finance as well, but this is not finance, this is supply chain management. So what we can do with the costing ledger is then we could calculate values of the inventory parallel to all the other things that we do in separate ledger. So we could say to the Danish government, which is kind of nice and easy going when it comes to this, at least, or whatever local authority it is, yes, we will do the reporting according to what you would like to do, according to this calendar, different from our fiscal year, but the currency different from our accounting currency, using exchange rate table, and then using convention. And I have to admit, I had to read up a little bit about this with the convention, what it is, but I know what a convention is, but what is it in here? It's basically like a template to me. It's a collection of the rules. So if you got like 150 or 200 manufacturing companies where you set up some of the same accounting policies, why would you want to do it for each and every legal entity? So basically, you could set up kind of templates, I know, conventions, but kind of templates, and then apply this to one or more ledgers across multiple legal entities in the same legal entity. If you're going to have multiple costing ledgers, because that's what you could do. You could have multiple costing ledger within a legal entity on that. So the benefit of all of this is now it is easier for manufacturing companies to play by the rules, even if we could say that GAAP and IFRS we could still do in Dynamics 365. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people have some government restrictions on how you could report, and this is taking care of that. So it is also making sure that you can actually trace what happened all the way back to the original transaction. So if the local taxman says that I really like to know this, which is calculated into Chinese yuan or Mexican pesos or whatever it would be, what was the original purchase order invoice or whatever it was, and which was the currency, and you can trace all the way back. And that's one of the places where I actually think that Dynamics 365 excels. That is the traceability of all the things that happen. So this is a little bit, well, kind of dry and things. So I got an illustration in there. We used to have all the production documents, which of course we still have, the calculation of overheads. We got the inventory transaction with or without the warehouse specific things. And now the new things that has been added is that we could do inventory accounting ledgers, multiple inventory accounting ledgers, according to IFRS, to US GAAP, and then according to our accounting currency as usual, or whatever we'd like to do. I think this is big. And then, of course, based on that, you could do cost analysis based on each of these accounting ledgers as well now. What do you think, Andreas? Is that, I know, finance, but still.
That's up to you.
That's up to me. Okay, I like it, really. I think this is good, really. And even though, when customers say, well, we're not allowed to do this, and then you don't always start arguing, yes, you could do it like this and still play by the rules of IFRS. And now you got a solution, say, okay, sure, if you're not happy with what we do in a single ledger in Dynamics 365, why not just create an additional costing ledger? Now it's possible to do so. Might not always be recommendable, but still, it's possible. So what Microsoft says that when we got these international organizations, I do agree with kind of the second part in here with the local governments and tax authorities. They do not allow you to do the things in there because from my point of view, it is okay what Dynamics 365 does when you take into account the variance accounts and other things too when you're using standard cost and moving average. But now we've got a solution where you could do the things. And especially the second thing in here, you want to do the inventory by a local currency and the functional currency too. That's nice, and that's now possible. Now, getting close to the question and answer session, just got a couple of smaller things, and this is not big at all. But sometimes people move around the cheese, and then you get confused about that. So I just want to give you a heads up on the web client. I know, small thing, but if you're in front of your colleagues or customers or whatever, and all of a sudden you're looking for the button where it used to be, and you don't find it, might not be nice. So just have a heads up on this, that the user interface from the current general available version 10.0.32 has changed. Not huge. I'll show you a couple of things. And is that it? Yeah, there's more coming, but Microsoft says these are the biggest ones this time around. The largest changes happen in this, and they say, okay, it's going to be small ones, the next one coming around for sure. Let me show you a couple of examples, and then we move on. So this is the previous version, the old one, 10.0.31. We got the close button upper right, the X, which we'll click on to close the screen, and we've got a filter pane on the left-hand side next to where I've got my saved UX Gateway version 10.0.31. This is what it looks like on 10.0.31. And now, not a big change, I know. This is 10.0.32. And you don't find the close button where it used to be. That's, I think, the most significant change. And then the one I like the most is actually that the filter pane is moved to the right. And the reason why I like that the filter pane is moved to the right is that when you use the filter pane on the left-hand side, the size of that could change. So if your eyes will have to go to different places to find the columns, and I think it makes more sense to put it over here. And after all, this is standardization. This is what Microsoft does in a lot of other products, and that's the fluent thing, which is the terminology for the new way to design the screens. That now it's going to have, you see, rounded fields and rounded buttons, and the action pane up here is rounded too. Not a big thing. The biggest things that I could find, the filter pane now gone right, and the close X up here gone kind of left to this, well, kind of back arrow, but still does the same thing. It's not huge, but you know, if you have to scramble to close the screen, you just need to know where it is so your mouse is not all over the place in front of your colleagues and customers. Not huge, not rocket science, but just be aware of there are a few changes. These are some of the biggest ones in here. Okay, that was the close button, or take me out of here, and the filter pane. And now I'll take you out of here. And while Andreas and I are going through the questions that you had, I think that Alison will have a few words with you about some of the other things where you could learn some more. So Alison, are you put to sleep by all my talking, or are you ready?
I'm not asleep, I'm busy in the chat.
Okay, that's good.
Popping out of the chat onto camera. Thanks, Finn. Thanks, Andreas. I just want to thank you all for joining us today and let you know that there's another opportunity to learn live with Andreas next week on Monday. He's going to be delivering the 5-day live online MB330 Supply Chain Management Exam Preparation course. So there's still places available. It's a small group setting delivered in real time. You'll have one-to-one support from Andreas, who's with us today. So if you want to continue learning with him live next week, do take a look. I will pop a link to the course in the chat for you right now. Bear with me. There you go. So if you're planning to take the MB330 exam, this training is going to equip you with all the knowledge and skills you're going to need to pass. You'll benefit from that small class size and the real-time support from Andreas. You'll also have access to a Microsoft Dynamics 365 training environment, personal copy of the Measure Up MB330 Microsoft approved practice test, which is going to give you a real feel for the exam itself, and also enable you to practice in your own time. All the sessions are recorded and available to rewatch for 30 days. If you've got any questions about this course, please pop them in the chat. Also, if Finn could move on to the next slide, he has the power. Thank you. I would like to mention today our training environments. So you can get full access to your own standalone Microsoft prepared training environment, which comes complete with D365 FO Contoso demo data and exercises, so you can practice in your own time. And you can purchase these without having registered for a course. Although to get the most value out of them, we do recommend you use them in conjunction with one of our on-demand courses. But you'll get 180 days access period, 4 days save period, which means your work's going to be saved for 4 days after your last save, unlimited launches, and 24/7 customer support from our service provider. So I will again pop a link for those in the chat. Just one moment. And I can see there is a question from Lenka there, so I'll pass that over to Finn as well for the Q&A session. But that is me done. Please do keep an eye on our website for the latest courses and our LinkedIn profile as well, where there's loads of updates about D365FO and all the exam preparation courses we do. But I will leave you back in the capable hands of Finn and Andreas for the Q&A session. So thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Alison. But just before the Q&A session, I just got a small thing. Please, Andreas, it's not that I want to hold your horses back or whatever. Just, oops, wrong way around. I just want to spill the beans just a little bit about an exciting new course coming up. I know you're not going to do anything about the Power Platform next week, and I know you don't mention too much about it in your new edition of your book. Good thing it's finished, by the way. But I really think the Power Platform is becoming so big with Dynamics 365 Finance Operations. We start to have the business events and other things too. So we just can't help ourselves. We're going to have courses in this. And one of the most exciting things is actually we're going to do things about Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform along with our existing and new instructors. But question and answer time it was. So Andreas, I think I'll move through the chat questions that I had. Alison has been passing some up here, so I'll just read them aloud, and then perhaps you and I could see if we got any answers for that. One of the questions I had was, is central product lifecycle management similar to engineering change management?
Well, I think it's, well, correct me if I'm wrong, Finn, because you're the expert in central product lifecycle management. But what I know is central product life management is more or less managing the master data across multiple companies, whereas the engineering change management is more for changes. That means we have a product version this year, and next year we have the same product number, but slight changes to the product, and to be able to track the changes of the product. That's the core idea of the product, of the engineering change management, and often it is used together with the product dimension version, which gives you then the traceability, which version or of the product you have sold to customer, for example.
Yeah, I agree. This just shows the reason for joining you next week in the class, because you gave a very elaborate question. I would just have said no, basically, on that. It is not the same thing. I agree with you that central product lifecycle management basically about the master data, and the engineering change management to me is, as you said, about versioning and keeping track of which one it was actually when you substitute some of the cable or some of the components in the bill of materials or whatever it will be, and also the internal improvement of things that if you're allowed to do that. So I absolutely agree with you. So that's great. And then we have a dangerous question from Josefa. Isn't allowing physical reservation of finished goods before posting journal almost dangerous?
Well, I trust Microsoft has solved this.
Yeah, but do you trust the users? I think that's more the question on that. If the things you do in a journal, if they're not posted, would you then think this is okay to? I think that's what's in the question. Would you trust the data if it's not yet posted?
Well, the idea is that it's not yet posted, but posted within a few parts of a second.
Yeah.
And if it stops with some errors, something like that, well, I trust Microsoft has found a way to solve.
I don't know, but couldn't you hold actually? Couldn't you, in other ways, do the journal and then leave it and stop it from posting? I know normally we'll set it up to automatically post it, but could you do some updates on a production note where you say we're not going to post this journal automatically? Then there will be sort of a manual control time gap between the transactions that you do in the journal. You will then have the physical reservation going on, and you don't know when it's going to be posted on that.
Well, I'm not 100% sure, but from what I can see is that this is not not updating the journal immediately does not mean that you can post it manually. It's not. It just tells you the automatic the update is not similar to the subledger transaction posting.
Okay.
If you stop subledger transfers, then the subledger and the general ledger will not be synchronized, but there will be a gap. But in the end, of course, the journals are maybe a little bit more dangerous.
Okay, so that took us out of danger zone, I guess. Question from Henrik Forss. Does planning optimization support Finn capacity planning?
I would need to check, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, great. Right, on the update of the user interface, got a question from Alex. The removal of the X button is a problem. Where is the equivalent? To me, the equivalent is that sort of the back arrow in the upper left-hand corner. So basically where you had the X in the upper right-hand corner, you now got the back button on the upper left-hand corner, which does the same thing to me. So I think it's more of a thing of getting used to that it is different, the terminology is different, but basically it does the same thing, saves your data when you get back. So it's not kind of, oh, I'm not going to do it, so just take me out of this screen. But it is the same thing as the close, now just with the back arrow. And that's part of that Microsoft Common Fluent design, which you're trying to apply to all the applications. Now, Andreas, I've got somebody who just hit my stomach kind of thing with a question in here from Lenka. Do you plan to have a B335 exam preparation course? We just talked about that today, didn't we?
Yes, absolutely. Well, there will be an exam preparation course from X Academy. Currently, basically the MP335 certification was originally scheduled, I think, half a year ago or some at that time. It should be published. It is not published yet, but there are signs that it will be published soon. So, for example, starting next week, a beta exam will be available.
Yeah.
And well, the issue is we can only do a preparation course when there are official materials, because we want to train what's relevant for the exam.
Yeah, we actually had a look today because we originally had a webinar with the two of us about the MP335. Originally it was in, I think, December the first time around, and then nothing happened from Microsoft's side. And then we moved it until to April, I think. And now, unfortunately, we had to cancel because, as you said just today, there's no news about learning materials and learning path. And then we thought it has no value to do a webinar about that. So to answer your question, Lenka, yes, we planned that. We planned ever since we heard about the MP335 exam, which is many months ago. But as Andreas said, we can't teach if we don't have any courseware or learning paths, as it's called. So you can find the beta exam. Sorry, Andreas, you're saying?
Yeah, because of course we could tell or teach the topics which are in the exam topics, but if we don't stick to the official materials, then we don't hit the exam questions and the exam areas.
Then you might have one or two students who are going to be slightly upset if they participate in order to pass the exam, and then we did a lot of good training, but we're not answering the questions in the exam at all. So, Lenka, unfortunately, we have to wait. As soon as we know for sure that we got the learning pass, we will certainly A, schedule courses, and B, schedule a webinar to tell you what this B335 is about. It really sounds good. It sounds good for 8 months or whatever it is, and still sounds good. But we need to get something to be able to train properly on that. Now, the last question I had is actually a follow-up question, seems like, from Josefa about that was a danger zone question, right? I don't know. I can't give any example of a use case where this would be, I guess, usable, that you could now make a reservation of finished goods before posting the journal. What do you think, Andreas? Is there a case where this tool is actually, if it's dangerous or not, where it adds some value?
Well, to my opinion, it's similar to the subledger transfer. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. It's more a question of the system performance. So in a way, decoupling. So if it takes a lot of time to post all the transactions, and you want to, maybe in retail areas or something like that, be able to transfer the items immediately and not wait for a few seconds, then this would be useful. Similar to the subledger transfer, where in earlier times you always had everything immediately in the general ledger, and to save the time, it has been decoupled.
Yeah, that's sometimes the surprises you get on that. If it's not real-time update, but near real-time update, I think we mentioned that a few times today.
I'm not 100% sure about this, but to me this would be a useful explanation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have answered all the questions that we had at this time. Perhaps next week during the course, you will have some other questions, Andreas, as well. So I'm sure you're going to be busy as usual with the supply chain management training. There's so many things in there. Now we've just got just 1 minute left. How can we cram all the things from supply chain management into 5 days? You can't get through all the details, can you?
And there are more and more details added for Microsoft. Well, of course, the way to go can only be that we have a core scope or focus on the main areas to give a basic understanding. And then if you have the basic understanding, you can work and understand the other areas which are or are not relevant, depending on what you need, more or less on your own. And if you have got questions, you can come back to me.
Yeah, and at least for Ebit 330 supply chain management, unlike the Ebit 335, there's lots of learning paths, lots of material on Microsoft Learn. Okay, thank you very much, Andreas, for joining me here today. Thank you, Alison and Henny. And of course, thank you all you guys joining our webinar today. I hope you learned something in here, and have a look at xcanvas.com/webinars for the next webinars we're going to have. We're going to wait a bit, as mentioned, with the Ebit 335, but hey, there's some other things coming up. Thank you very much for being here today, and have a good day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, Andreas. Thank you.